With that, I'll get started. First of all, thank you for being here. I assume that you're here because you're interested in learning about Protomatrix. So my goal today is to make sure that you get every piece of information that you need to get started. My name is Hai. I'm co-founder of Affluence, and that's the company behind Protomatrix. And with that, over the years, over the decade or so, I've talked to thousands of customers, done so many interviews and so forth. And so I have a pretty good understanding of the challenges that a lot of customers like you may face. So the goals for today would be to try to distill all that down into the basics of Protomatrix and then help you get the most out of it with the least amount of work. And then thirdly, help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Protomatrix implemented. So one of the things that I've seen over and over again are the challenges, the common challenges that our customers face. So one of them is that team members often have trouble understanding what's priority right now. And even though at the end of the day, Protomatrix helps individuals manage their priorities, what I've discovered too is that if you can make yourself more effective, then you can go and extrapolate that and will to share that prioritization across your team and actually help everyone else also become more effective. And so not only are individuals struggling with individual personal prioritization, the team struggles as well. And being able to communicate those priorities is so important. And then secondly, it is getting harder and harder to keep track on the status of work across so many areas of responsibilities. I think long gone are the days when we actually have one very well-defined thing we have to do. In fact, when you start your day, you're probably being pulled in 5 different directions. There's so many context switching and so forth. So how do you stay on top of all of that? And I think one of the things that Protomatrix does well is help you understand all of that. And then the last part of it, the third challenge is that emails and meeting are just causing too much context switching. In fact, I've heard feedback from customers how they keep on thinking technology would help. But what everyone's discovered, myself included, is that technology is not helping. In fact, over the last couple of years, people are using so much more communication software and so forth. And all that's done is now create more and more channels for tasks to be delegated or status updates to be made. And so people continue to struggle with that context switching. And in particular, emails have never been easier to manage. In fact, I get hundreds of emails every single day, and staying on top of that remains a challenge. So Protomatrix is a software for email priority and project management to help you become more effective at managing your emails, conduct more efficient meeting, and get real-time status on critical projects and priorities. So hopefully you're here because you're trying to understand how you can implement this Protomatrix software and the fundamentals behind Protomatrix itself into your everyday work life. So how does Protomatrix help with those challenges that I mentioned? First, we use what's called the 4-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. I'll go into the details of the 4-quadrant methodology because it's really important to understand how it all fits together and how you can use Protomatrix as this really effective communication tool. Secondly, Protomatrix provide views such as the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. The word context is so important here because context means so many different things depending on what it is that you're working on, right? When you start your day and you're checking your emails, what's the context there is what are the emails that I need to address? What are the emails I need to respond to? When you're in a meeting with your manager, what are the things that you have to report on? When you are working with a client, what are the things you have to do for them? And then thirdly, Protomatrix provide deep integrations into systems you already use, including Microsoft Teams and Outlook for effective email and task prioritization. In fact, we're probably the most integrated solutions in Teams, and we're expanding our integration so much more over the next couple of months, which is something I'm extremely excited about. So I've added this recently as a way to help people understand what makes Protomatrix different from other apps. Now, if you're here and you started looking at task management application, project management application, email management application, you know that there are not dozens, but hundreds, if not thousands of applications out there, all trying to solve very, very specific problems. Now, Protomatrix is not the cure-all for all of this, but I do want to share some differences between standard applications. So for example, your to-do list, right? You probably have had experiences with multiple to-do list applications in the past. What's great about them is they're easy to use. Make a list, very, very simple. But then how do you decide what to work on? And then not only that, how do you understand what needs to be done within the context of your team? That's the difference between a standard to-do list and Protomatrix. Or you've probably heard of Trello, Asana, and so many other large applications out there that actually exist for project management. The challenge with them is they're really good at managing projects, but they still don't help you understand the context of importance and urgency. And you have to jump through multiple hoops to get there. And then, of course, you have your full-fledged project management software. The problem with them is that it just might be overkill. And in fact, one of the things I really, really hate is if I have to spend more time updating a task and adding all this extra information to it than the time it takes me just to get that thing done. And then not only that, when you have barriers like that, it makes it extremely difficult for other team members to get on board. Vast majority of people aren't, I don't want to call them not tech savvy, but at the same time, they don't want to spend all this time going through and clicking on 15 different buttons to actually add information to every single task. And then lastly, people have asked, how does Protomatrix compare to note-taking apps? Well, we're not a note-taking app. They're just two different worlds. Note-taking app is just a way to jot all your thoughts down, which I use my own note-taking app too. But Protomatrix is about understanding what you need to work on. And so I want to bring that up as a way for you to differentiate, understand the differences between all these different applications, how they all fit together. And Protomatrix serves a very, very specific purpose. So Protomatrix is also the only project email and meeting management software that is Microsoft 365 security certified across our Teams app, web app, and Outlook app. We're leveraging AI more and more to help you achieve your goals in terms of project creation, as well as guides to actually help you figure out how to use Protomatrix best within your own context. And then we provide what's called people-centric collaboration, which is something that I think is extremely important because so many project management software out there focus on projects and the things you have to do. But in reality, my opinion is that when you do something, you're doing it for somebody. You're doing it for your manager. You're doing it for your clients. You're doing it for your family members, et cetera. And so Protomatrix can actually flip all of that around and show you what needs to be done within the context of the person that you're working with. And then Protomatrix is also available as a standard solution, software as a service solution, a HIPAA compliant solution where for healthcare, life sciences, or those that have to manage PII data, and then Azure Government Cloud for state and local governments. So if your organization is interested in any of our other enterprise solutions, including private deployment, reach out to us, reach out to me, hi@affluence.com, and we'd be happy to walk you through what we're capable of doing. But the whole goal of this is Protomatrix works no matter what software system that you use, and we're there to help you understand what your priorities are within your own work as well as within the whole organization. So let's talk about the fundamentals behind Protomatrix. There's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." What I really like about this quote is that it helps encapsulate the challenges that we face every single day in terms of deciding what we need to work on. Let me give you an example. You started this morning, you probably open your email, look at your email. How many of those emails are actually important to your actual goals that you have for this month or this quarter? The reality is 95% of the stuff that we see that we are actually looking at every single day is not relevant to our long-term goal. And so these emails just keep on requiring our attention to, go and respond or follow up, et cetera. But they actually are, it's just there to, in fact, I would consider them distractions from the overall goal. But when you answer that email, you get a rush, right? So in fact, I've seen some people recommend that you actually time box how you manage your emails and all these other things that actually pull your attention away from your core work, just so that you're not spending all this time on the urgent things. On the other hand, what are the things that are important? The things that are important are the things that drives your goals. And it could be your quarterly goals, it could be your annual goals, it could be your monthly goals, whatever it is. But if you look at this from the dimensions of importance and urgency, really the thing you should be working on are the things that are important and urgent, because they're probably fires that you got to fight. And then the things that are important but not urgent, which are the things that actually will help you meet your goals. And then everything else should be put in the back burner and you only address them on an as needed basis. So one of the exercises that I love to ask people to do is imagine if you take out a piece of paper, start writing down everything you have to do, and then take that and split it into 4 quadrants. The first is the do now. These are the things that are important and urgent. Again, the firefighting, right? So if you don't get this done, something's going to break within your overarching master plan. And then the second quadrant 2, is the planning quadrants. These are the things that are important but not urgent. And this is not so obvious that that you start in quadrant 1, but then quadrant 2 is what you work on next, because people again tend to be pulled towards urgent things rather than things that are important. And then on the bottom left are the things that delegate. These are the things that perhaps someone else can do a better job than you at tackling. And so that's what you want to delegate to somebody else. And then finally, instead of having anything that's not important and not urgent, if you have any of those tasks, those should go away right away. But instead, look at quadrant 4 as what's called your inbox. These are the things that they come in, they sit there, and then you haven't decided exactly where they fit in within the bigger picture. And then from there, you move into the other quadrants as needed. Now, when you use Protomatrix, we force you to use this method to actually structure your task. And this is the hardest part, by the way. A lot of customers struggle with this aspect of Protomatrix. And I'm going to be honest with you, which is it is not easy. It is not easy to go and prioritize this, but that's the point of Protomatrix. Because if you are actually succumbing to the list and just making that list longer and longer and longer, you're not going to understand what it is that you need to work on. So this is the hard part, but this is where the investment of your time is worth it. Now, one thing that's really interesting too is how much time do you spend doing this? You know, it's fascinating because we spend so much time doing work and we spend so little time planning. And so I would argue that if you have within the bigger picture of everything, if you spend 20% of your time working on this right here, on deciding what needs to be worked on, and then the other 80% of the time actually executing, you'll get the most value out of Protomatrix. At the same time, as you're looking at your master plan here, do not have more than 25% of things in each of those top quadrants, right? If everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. So that's enough about philosophy. So now let's dive into how to actually implement this inside Protomatrix. So I want to emphasize one thing that actually is not so obvious at all, which is success from using Protomatrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. It's also about discovering the disagreement on what should be a priority when it isn't. Let me try to explain that one more time. If you took everything you needed to do, write it down into that 2x2 matrix, and then you ask all your teammates, your coworkers, your colleagues, your managers to do the exact same exercise within your entire office. And then you walk around and you start comparing notes. Do you think everyone would be aligned on priorities? Do you think that your manager would look at your quadrant 1 and says, I agree 100%, there's nothing there that I think is not important. And then you look at the other quadrant, they all match perfectly. And then you look at each of their priorities, it's all aligned. And if you're able to achieve that, you're a rare unicorn. And I have rarely seen any customers that are able to achieve that. But instead, success from Protomatrix then is actually looking at each person's quadrants and seeing, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize that this is high priority. I didn't realize that this should be low priority. And then you start shuffling things around. And then finally, when everyone walks away from that note comparing exercise, everyone's on the same page. That's where the magic happens with Protomatrix. I want to emphasize that, this again is an introduction to Protomatrix. And so we'll walk through the basic capabilities, and I will also hint at the capabilities inside Protomatrix that you should really invest your time in, because 20% of the features will give you 80% of the value. Everything else is optional. And so as you're getting started, focus on the core features of Protomatrix, and then everything else will fall into place later on. The webinars are recorded and we post them on our website there. feel free to reach out to us, support at Affluence or hi at Affluence at any point in time if you have any questions. If you have questions right now during the webinar, send it in the chat and I'll keep an eye on it. And then at the very end, I'll try to wrap it all together and answer that for you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the product here. Okay, so what I have here is my Party Matrix open. And as you can see, I have the web app here open and I have a project that's selected, and within the middle, front and center, is the 4 quadrants. You see how whenever I create a task in Party Matrix, it has to be within this context. And I call this the importance and urgency context. So within this project here, let's say I want to add a task. And the first task is, let's follow up with webinar participants, okay? And then when I create a task in Party Matrix, I also want to make sure that I set the proper due dates. And I can just say, participants, there you go. Due tomorrow, 2 p.m., okay? When I create a task, that's how it works in Party Matrix. And what happens is Party Matrix will create the task, and now on the right-hand side, the task is created, and what this is called is the item details. And because I said due tomorrow, 2 p.m., our system automatically interprets that using natural language. And so it sets a due date for tomorrow, November 2nd at 2 p.m. my local time. And within this item context here, you can see that I have the task name, what project belongs in. And let's just say this task is very important. I can go ahead and start it. And when I do, it tells me that this is important. And if I need reports on it, I can get a report later. I can go to here, and then I can choose an icon that actually might be relevant. And what I really like, by the way, one of the icons I really like are these colors here. So just very visual. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and choose the yellow, but you can do red, yellow, and green, just a way to easily see if something's behind schedule or on schedule. And then as you scroll down more, you have ownership. This is the person who's in charge of this task. In Party Matrix, it can only be one owner. You can have followers. Followers are people who will be updated if there are changes to the task, but there can only be one owner. And then the owner's avatar shows up here. The whole idea around prioritization is at the same time understanding responsibilities. Who is responsible? You cannot say multiple people are responsible because then no one is, right? Even within a team or a group or something like that, you could say this group is responsible, but then at the end of the day, there's still one person who should be the person that says, you know what? This is done, or, gets the credit for it. So in Party Matrix, it's the exact same way. You can only have one owners, but you can have followers. Let me give you an example. Let's say if I create a task and I assign it to a teammate, right? When I assign to that teammate, I get added as a follower in Party Matrix. And then when that task gets updated or marked as done, I get notified. So that's actually a very important part of the feedback cycle in Party Matrix, which is you want to know that a task is created, you want to know that a task is updated, you want to know that a task is completed, and so you can actually have a full visibility within the entire life cycle of every single action item. And the next day you have progress, 0 to 100%. And then effort, reminders, and due dates. Now, there's a big difference between due dates and reminders. And let me give you an example. Let's say you have a task that you need to work on and it's due in 2 weeks, but that task will take you 2 days to actually get done. If you wait for that due date, you're not going to get that done on time. So what you might want to do is you want to set a reminder 10 days from now so that you can actually get started on it. So I use due dates and reminders every single day on vast majority of my tasks. Those are the 2 core functionality that I want to highlight, and I want to make sure that if you use Party Matrix, use those capabilities. So when you create a task in Party Matrix, set the due date, set reminders. What happens is it adds the context of dates, right, of time. Because when we say we got to get something done, then the next question usually is, so when should I get that done? And so therefore, you want to make sure that you set those dates, because when you do, Party Matrix can actually give you much better visibility on how you should spend your time. And reminders is a way to ensure that you go back and you circle back and get the right things done. So again, let me give you an example, because this is so important. When I have a critical task, I would always say something like due in 1 week, right? So for example, here, I'm going to change the due date. I'm going to use, again, our natural language system. I'm going to say due in 1 week. And then what happens is, let's just say if I'm afraid that I will accidentally forget it, I'm also going to say remind me weekly. So what this will do is on a weekly basis, I'll get a reminder to get this task done. And just in case I miss it next week, the following week, I'll get a reminder again. When I work with customers, sometimes I have to follow within a year. So I would say due in 1 year, but then I would say remind me in 11 months. And so I never drop task, critical task for that reason. Now let's go down further into the item details. You have the chat section, and you can see here, I started interacting with the chat section. So what is the chat section? It's all around context of the task itself. So for example, let's say you have something to do and you assign it to somebody and you ask them for a status update and you have a meeting about it or you send emails back and forth. That's fine and dandy at that moment in time. But what happens is in a month or 2 months, when you want to circle back and understand what were all the decisions that's been made, everything that's been discussed, it is extremely difficult to get reminded of all the decisions that were made. So the whole point of the chat here inside Matrix is that it's within the context of this task. So when you have a conversation with multiple people and you're talking about all the things you're going to do or all the updates and status and so forth, Matrix keep that record for you forever within the context of this task. So then in 6 months or a year or 3 years, you need to go back and see what decisions were made. You can see that. And then not only that, it is very useful when you bring on new team members. And new team members need to understand let's just say, in 6 months, you want somebody else to take over the task. They can actually look at the chat and see, oh, okay, I see that, we made this decision, we talk about this and so forth, and they can get caught up so quickly. And it's also useful if someone leaves the organization, you still have that record here. And so our customers use the chat as a place to have that record keeping. And as you can see, the chat even works well for me as an individual. Even if I don't chat with anybody else within this context of this task, I still see all the changes, all the history of everything that I've done. So it is very useful. And now, within the Matrix itself, you can click on here to set the due dates. You can click on here to set reminders. But at the same time, you can actually write text into here. And whenever the text turns green, our system interprets it and actually goes and process that. So now you have the note section. This is not intended to be a rich text place where you can go and add all sorts of fancy formatting. That's what Microsoft Word is for. That's what Google Docs are for, and so forth. The whole idea of the note section here is just to add some context within the task itself. And this is also where you can add subtasks. So let's just say your task might have 5 subtasks. As you mark them as done, the progress will get updated. And then you have the resources section, which is a way for you to attach documents, emails, presentations, links, or even dependencies with other tasks into one single task, so that you can actually have a sense of what are all the documents that's required within this action item. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if this was a follow-up webinar participants due tomorrow, and then I can go and I can draft an email, right? And then I sign to somebody else to get their feedback. And so I can do all of that in one central place here, and then I can go back to here and actually review it and assign to the appropriate person or actually mark this task as done. So that's the resource section. If you want to go and link tasks together with other tasks and create dependencies, that's where you click on link existing item, and everything in Matrix actually come tied together. Every action item in Matrix has a link. Every project in Matrix has a link. The same thing applies to everything in Microsoft. And so you're actually able to bring it all together into one central place. And then I will show you shortly how to actually take an email and prioritize it and have that be uploaded here into the file system. So that's the context of a task. So when you create a task in Matrix, I want to go back and emphasize the core capabilities that you should always use. First, always decide on what quadrant it should be in. Create the task in the appropriate quadrant. If you need to move it around, everything's just drag and drop, right? Second, when you create a task, make sure that you set a due date and make sure you set a reminder. And if you just do that, it's actually so easy for you to be on top of everything that you have to work on. And here's what's nice. When you take this view and you go into a meeting and you show it on your big screen and everyone else looks at it and say, okay, you know what? I agree on all the goals and objectives that we have in quadrant 1. We can talk about those and ignore everything else. And that's the goal of Matrix. It's a communication tool to ensure that everyone's on the same page. So keep that in mind. If you set the due date, if you set reminders and you use the appropriate quadrants, that's already the hardest thing you have to do in Product Matrix. So now let me give you a sense of how to create and manage projects. So as you can see here, I have a list of projects on my left-hand side here. So I got maybe what, like 30 or so here. In my actual Product Matrix account, I have something like 300 projects. So Product Matrix does an incredible job of actually helping me stay organized despite having so many projects. And it's not something I struggle with at all in terms of identifying what it is I need to work on. So to create a project in Product Matrix, you can go to project here and create project. When you create project, you have several options. The first is always the blank project. If I click on blank project and just type the project name, I can decide if I want to assign user groups to it. User group just means, like, for example, departments or team members, etc. And then I can choose what color it is. Pretty basic. When I start with that project, it's just a blank project. And then from there, I can add whatever it is that I need to add. Alternatively, what I can do is actually I can choose from what's called public templates. So one thing that's really fascinating is that what I like about the 2x2 matrix is that it actually encompasses so many different dimensions. I talked about importance and urgency, but at the same time, you can have a 2x2 matrix that is what's called effort impact, right? Like high effort, high impact, high effort, low impact, etc. Or you might have other terminologies such as 30, 60, 90-day plan. So essentially, instead of actually just using the matrix as a way to manage priorities, you can change the quadrant name to be more suitable to whatever it is that you need to work on. So in public templates, we actually just have a few dozen templates here for you to leverage, and you can get started with it. Helps you, brainstorm different ways to use Product Matrix. At the same time, we actually have several hundred different types of templates that we've created, customizing the quadrant name that helps you tackle very, very specific challenges. You can also create your own template. So when you create a project in Product Matrix, you can actually go and save that project as a template. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if you are a consulting firm and you work with external clients, and when you bring on an external client, you have let's just say you work with an external client, you have maybe 15 things you have to do to get them started, right? And so you have something you have to do today, something you have to do next week, next month, etc. When you create that Product Matrix, you can go and save that as a template. And then later when you launch, when you create a new project, and let's say you have a new client, you can actually choose from one of those templates. So when you click on my templates here, these are essentially templates that I've created for myself. And so then when I choose one of those templates, all the tasks that I've created get propagated for me, and I just have to choose the start date. So it's a very, very useful way to save on efforts, especially if you have a recurring task. So this is great for processes that are recurring. This is great for employee onboarding. This is great for quarterly tasks, etc. And then the last option on ways to create project is to use our AI system. So what our AI system does is actually very, very trivial. It takes your goal, and from your goal, we build out a series of action items that might be relevant to actually tackling that goal. And so, for example, let's say you want to be promoted this year, right? You can go and type, I want to be promoted. I want to be promoted from project manager to senior project manager. And then our system will go and say, okay, you know what? These are the tasks that you can do to communicate how you can actually get such promotion. So that's how you create a project in Product Matrix. So now I exit this view here. When I go back to my list of projects, you can see that my star projects are at the very top. I have a project for my personal priorities. I have a project for my team priorities. I have a project for my goals for 2023, for example. So these are all the different ways in which you can organize Product Matrix. And as you can see too, I can actually customize the color for each of these projects, just as a way to color code and be very visual and see what it is that I need to work on. So let me jump into an example project here. So let's say my personal priorities. When I choose another project, what happens is the right-hand side become the project details. So we saw the item details earlier. Now this is the project details. I can also get to that view by clicking on Edit Project here. But from my project details, I can actually customize the name of the project. I can choose user group. Again, I can say, this is a sales team or a marketing team, or essentially if you have a couple people that work together, and whenever you have these types of projects, you can associate those groups. You can also override and manually add team members, right? So I can go and invite a team member to this project, and now the team member would have access to my project and see everything I have here. But down here further, you can actually customize the quadrant name too. So you saw how I have do now, do later, delegate, inbox, but actually I can go and change to any of these quadrant names to be more suited to my own organization method. So we actually have a lot of customers in the beginning, they'll use the basic Pretty Matrix templates, but then over time they realize, wait a minute, I should use quadrant 3 for files or resources, etc. And you can actually change that here. And then you can actually click on here and also change the color. I like the color coding as a way to visualize the types of projects that you have. For example, when you work with external people, maybe they're color coded in one way, or you have engineering project, they're color coded different from marketing project, etc. So because of the way Pretty Matrix manage all of that, by color coding, you can actually have a better visibility on everything that you have to do. As I mentioned, I have more than 300 projects, and I don't struggle understanding what it is to work on because Pretty Matrix can actually go and aggregate all those together and just tell me what I need to work on at any point in time. As I mentioned earlier, you can actually go up here and you can actually save project as templates. You can actually share these projects. You can get secret inbox email address. So every project in Pretty Matrix has an inbox link, has a secret email where you can forward email into your projects directly from here after you get that link. Now, let's go back to this quadrant view here. At the very top, you see how, again, everything is quadrant based, but then sometimes you actually want to see all these tasks in a list form. The way the list form works is that it's very, very good for identifying overdue tasks. So whenever I want to see overdue tasks, this is where I go. List view, I can sort by due, and then all the tasks that are overdue actually will show up here. And then not only that, I can actually sort by all these other dimensions as well, the quadrants, the icon, the people, the task name, the modified, etc. And then I can also go to the calendar view. And if I have tasks that's due here, for example, let me see if I can go back here. See, I say I have a task here. I can actually just drag and drop from here, or I can click on the task and then edit it. So some people prefer the calendar view. Some people prefer the quadrant view. Again, the whole idea here is within the context of dates, within the context of importance, within the context of who is responsible. So Pretty Matrix just takes all that data and visualize it in a way that helps you make your decisions. And then finally, you have this called the Gantt chart or the timeline view, depending on how you want to use it. But if you have tasks that are dependent on each other, Pretty Matrix will actually show those dependencies directly here. So let me give you an example. Let's say you select a task, you go to resource section, you say link existing task, and you can choose another task here, and then you can decide that this task is blocked by, or this task blocks, or this task is caused by, or this task causes. This capability is completely optional, but for project managers, it is very helpful if they want to tie everything together and be able to generate Gantt charts for the reports and so forth. And then this is the matrix view. Go back to the matrix view. So now let me switch gear a little bit and talk about email management, because that's actually one of the reasons why customers come to Pretty Matrix, which is they struggle with prioritizing emails. As I mentioned to you earlier, I get hundreds of emails per day. And if you want to prioritize email, what do you do, right? I mean, I'm asking you really, like, how do you mark an email as important today? You probably flag it, which is what I do too. So I'm guilty of that. It's fine if you flag 5 emails. What happens if you flag 50 emails? It becomes extremely difficult to be on top of the emails that you have to answer if everything is flagged. And then when you look at the list, you have to decide, okay, what it is that I should respond to. So the way Pretty Matrix works is you can take an email and convert it into an action item in Pretty Matrix and attach all this other information with the item details that is mentioned earlier. So let me give you an example here. Let's just say if I choose an email, okay, from this email, I can go to the Pretty Matrix add-in in Outlook. If you don't have this already, click on apps and then search for, click on add apps and search for Pretty Matrix. And then from there, you can actually have access to this application. So when I go to Outlook and I click on Pretty Matrix, I get 2 options here. I get an option to open Pretty Matrix or an option to prioritize this email. So if I got an email and now I want to prioritize this email, I click on prioritize email. The Outlook panel opens up here for Pretty Matrix. It allows me to capture the email, which means convert it into a task. But before I do that, I might want to customize the item name. Right now, it uses the subject as the item name, but I can change this. Let me give you an example. Let's say I get an email from a customer that says, hey, could you look into XYZ or send me an updated invoice? I can go in here, create this task, and then say, create this invoice for customer X, and then choose what project it goes in, choose what quadrant it goes in, assign it to a team member, set a due date, and then click capture email. And I can do all of that inside Outlook, ensuring that actually I can create the task and my teammates know that they have to get this done by a certain date. And you can see how after I click capture email, the item details pops up and that decides what project it's in. The email icon is automatically selected and all that other information is here. And then I can set a reminder and then everyone knows that exactly that you have these due dates and exactly when they need to address it. And then not only that, when you go to the resource section, actually, so I'm going to open this email here. When I go to the resource section, the email EML file is actually uploaded here for me. So when I assign an email to a coworker, the coworker can actually open that email, and which is really neat because the problem that we've seen, let's just say you get an email and you need to ask somebody to work on it. What today you can go and you can just forward that email to your coworker and say, hey, could you do this? The problem is if your coworker makes progress on it or doesn't see it or whatever, you have no idea. But with Protomatrix, you can actually, when you forward this task using Outlook and you create this task, you can actually ensure that they have the due date for it. They have reminders for it. And then when your coworker sees this task, it will show up here and it'll show their avatar. And it says that, your coworker has read this task. And it is so important reminding everybody that there's a feedback cycle to all these tasks. When you assign something, you want to know that they actually saw it, and then from there, they're actually making progress. And when they mark it as done, you actually get that full feedback cycle to ensure that nothing important falls through the crack. So think about Protomatrix as, again, that communication tool to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And if things are not getting marked as done in Protomatrix, then that means those tasks have not been done anywhere else. So keep that in mind when it comes to Protomatrix, and keep that in mind when it comes to using Protomatrix to prioritize these emails. But one other neat thing about Protomatrix is that it allows you to convert to attach an email to an existing task as well. So instead of actually prioritizing the email, I can actually choose to open Protomatrix. And then if I have an email that belongs in an existing task, I can actually just hover over that task and then attach it. And I can search for that task here and then attach this email to an existing task. Use case, let's just say you have a follow-up from an external client that says, hey, did you ever make progress on so-and-so task? Instead of creating another task in Protomatrix, you're going to attach an existing task. So then your coworkers are on the same page. So email prioritization is so powerful, so useful. I use it all the time. I'll get an email, and then from there, I need to assign somebody else in particular. I use the email prioritization to actually ensure that they see the email and then able to respond to it. As I mentioned earlier, too, in Protomatrix, every project has a special email address. And in fact, I also have my own special email address that shows up in my inbox. So for example, if I go back to here and I click on inbox, and essentially what the inbox is, it's actually a list of items that actually got forwarded into Protomatrix, but they don't belong in a project yet. And so this is the only time when they actually don't have a quadrant associated with it. But if I go to this view here, I can grab the secret inbox. What I like to do is I like to save the secret inbox as an email address. And then whenever I get a task, I just forward it into here, allowing me to create action items from any email. Even when I'm on the mobile device, I'm walking around and I happen to check my mail. I get a really important email. I want to make sure that I remember to address it. I forward it into my Protomatrix. And then in the body section, I would say due tomorrow or due in 3 hours or something like that, and Protomatrix will automatically remind me. So I've shown you how to create projects. I've shown you how to create action items. I've shown you how to delegate it. I've shown you how to prioritize it. I've shown you how to manage emails. Let's talk about Microsoft Teams for a second. So if you use Microsoft Teams, definitely install our applications inside Teams. Now it's completely optional to install the Outlook or Teams app in terms of Protomatrix. All you got to do is go to our website, click on web app, and you can use our web app for desktop app, native app, mobile app, etc. But if you do use Teams, you should install our app for the sole reason that it helps with context switching, right? If you use Microsoft Teams and you're talking about things you have to do, and then you have to open Protomatrix, and then from there have to create tasks, go to the appropriate project, that's just too much time wasted. So what we've done is we built a really, really deeply integrated solution inside Teams, allowing you to do so many things without even going to the Protomatrix application. So the first thing you have to do is go to the App Store and install Protomatrix. When you install Protomatrix, it shows up here. Make sure you right click and pin it. When you click on Protomatrix, you'll see a view that's almost identical to the web app view, right? You have the list of projects on the left-hand side. You have the item details, the project quadrant in the middle. Right here, I have the home view open. I have the home view in the web app as well. And then when I select a task, again, I have on my right-hand side the item details. So I don't have to go into show you the capability inside the web app inside Teams. But let me show you what makes Protomatrix different inside Teams. When you go to a chat section, and let's say you're talking to a coworker, you're able to open what's called the one-on-one. What the one-on-one does is it actually shows you all the tasks you have in common with your coworker across all of Protomatrix. So let me say that one more time. Whenever you're inside Teams and you're working with a coworker, you can literally see everything you have to do for them or with them or that you've assigned to them directly from this tab without even opening Protomatrix. So all you have to do is click on this plus icon, choose Protomatrix, and then choose the one-on-one view. And from the one-on-one view, you select the person. Now, imagine if you have 10 direct reports that work with you, right? You can actually add this tab for all 10 of direct reports. When you want to know what Eugenia has been working on, or you want to know what Sally's been working on, you can just go to this view, see all the tasks, see all the tasks that are overdue. It aggregates it across all the different projects. And then when you have your one-on-one meeting, you can open up this view and just start going down the list. What's nice is you're not opening a project, you're not opening and looking at different quadrants and so forth. It is so helpful. The second part is when you want to create follow-up tasks, you can actually click on Add Share Task and create the task directly from this view. I really like this because it saves me so much time having to go to a project, go to Protomatrix, selecting a project, choosing a quadrant, and then after creating a task, assign it to somebody. This does all of that in one move because it goes and automatically assigns to my coworker. I can choose what project it goes in, and I can say the task name, the due date directly from here. And so I use this all the time, especially if you just want to assign a task to a single person. And this happens during your one-on-one meetings and so forth. The other thing I want to show you is that how Protomatrix integrates with the other Teams features as well. So when you have a conversation with somebody inside Teams, you can actually just hover over any conversation and create a task directly from that Teams conversation. And then Protomatrix actually links back to that moment in time when you had that conversation. Additionally, you can actually open up these the Protomatrix and be able to send action cards. And so the whole idea here with these adapted cards is that it allows you to actually share tasks from Protomatrix directly inside a Teams conversation. The reason I use this is the following. Let's just say, I assign a task to a coworker, but the coworker never responded in Protomatrix. And so now I'm wondering, hey, did they see it and all that? So I would go here, select the task and send it to them, and they can open this task directly from inside Teams. Protomatrix also integrates with several other things. I won't go into the details because that's something that you can explore down the road. But when you go into the calendar view and you're creating meetings inside Teams, you can actually add Protomatrix tab to your meetings as well, allowing you to pull up agenda directly from the Teams meeting. The other thing Protomatrix allows you to do is actually build what's called workflow integrations with your Microsoft ecosystem. So if you go to apps here and you search for Protomatrix, you'll see that down in the workflow, we actually have multiple automations. And in fact, Protomatrix has a lot of automations in place that you can build within your own organization using Power Automate to say that if this, then that. But we also have several automations already in place for you. For example, you might want to move tasks that are overdue to quadrant 1, or you might want to capture whenever someone submit a Microsoft form, create a task in Protomatrix. These are all the example of things that you can do pretty easily with the workflow automations. But I'm going to give a caveat. None of this is required if you want to get, just 20% of the work in Protomatrix to get 80% of the value. Again, let me reemphasize what are the things you have to do. One, make sure that you create just a couple of projects, right? I personally think you should always have a personal project, then you have a team project, and then you have some sort of goal that you have for this quarter or this month or something like that. So at least those 3 projects. Within those projects, when you create the task, put them in the appropriate quadrants. Within each of those tasks, set the due dates, set the reminders. If that's all you did today, you will have very, very good clarity on what it is that you need to work on at any point in time. So I talked about due dates and I talked about reminders. How does Protomatrix actually remind me to actually get that done? That's all in the home view. So in the home view, there's a section called alerts. What the alerts does is the alerts tells me the action items that requires my attention. So for example, if I have a task and that task is due, it'll pop up here in the alert section. But I remember I told you how I can have a task that's due and then I may or may not get to it. What I can do is I can set reminders, right? So whenever a reminder comes around, it also shows up here in the alert section. The alert section is also from tasks that are delegated to me. So let's just say if someone assigns me a task, it'll also show up here in the alert section. Or if a task I assigned to somebody else and I'm a follower on and that task gets updated, it also shows up in the alert section. So the whole idea of the alert section is these are the tasks that requires my attention, but the way Protomatrix works is it only shows you tasks that actually relevant to you. If it's not relevant to you, it wouldn't show up here. One of the things I like to do is I would go and review these tasks, and then afterwards I can go and clear all notifications or clear anything that's older than a week or a day. And then if anything is actually important, or if anything has alerts that reminds me on a daily or weekly basis, it will pop back up for me again. And here from the home view too, you can see that I can see other tasks that I've visited. I can see my agenda. The agenda is just essentially tasks that are relevant to me or that's assigned to me, but that are due today or tomorrow or this week, etc. So it's a way to look at the time dimension. And then I can also look at my items. Essentially, these are tasks across everything, all of my project in one central place. Protomatrix also has extremely powerful filtering system. So if you go to the search view here, Protomatrix allows you to see everything that you have across your whole Protomatrix, but you can click on filter and then see whatever it is that you need to see, including things like what are the things that I finished last quarter? What are the things that my coworkers finished last quarter? What are the things that I have to do in the next 3 months, right? Protomatrix filtering system aggregates all the information that you have across all of your Protomatrix and shows up here in one central place. So whenever you need to find information, this is where you'd go. You go to search section and it shows everything that you have. And you can actually choose some of your presets here as well. Okay, so I think that in terms of capabilities, those are the most important things that that I want to show you today. So hopefully, let me jump back to the presentation here. Hopefully, you have a sense of what Protomatrix can do. So now it's on you to sign up for Protomatrix if you haven't already, and if you use Teams and Outlook, make sure you install our Teams and Outlook integrations. Again, they're not required to use Protomatrix, but if you do have them, it just makes your life a lot easier. Create at least those 3 projects that I mentioned to you. Invite the appropriate team members, and if you don't want others to work with you in Protomatrix, that's totally fine. Protomatrix started as an application that helps individuals manage their priorities. That's actually the core of our software. From something like 13 years ago, Protomatrix started out as a solution for individuals to manage priorities. It is over time that Protomatrix evolved into a system to help entire organizations manage their priorities. But if you're in a meeting, pull up your Protomatrix, put it on the big screen and help everyone get on the same page. It is so helpful, especially if you're a manager and you have a bunch of direct reports and everyone needs to be aligned, right? Do that. It is very, very helpful. Or if you're just using Protomatrix as an individual contributor and you're talking to your manager, instead of discussing all these things and talking about progress and so forth, the key is if you can use Protomatrix to identify what you should work on and then what you should not work on, you're going to save a lot of time. So use Protomatrix as that communication tool, bring it up in your meetings and so forth, and show others how you're prioritizing. At least they'll understand what it is that you're doing. When you create tasks in Protomatrix, set due dates. Set due dates, so important, and then put them in the appropriate quadrants, right? Again, if everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, ruthlessly prioritize. When I say that, what I mean is if you don't prioritize your time and you don't decide what you need to work on, somebody else will. So it is so important that you set your priorities so then when you're talking to others, everyone else knows what it is that you're working on. Couple of advice, use Protomatrix to track high impact tasks. So if you're very, very new to Protomatrix and you're worried about using Protomatrix to track all your to-dos and so forth, then step back. Make sure that the stuff that you put in Protomatrix are only most impactful to you, right? So maybe you don't want to use it as your grocery list because that may or may not make sense if you're thinking that you're spending too much time updating that. And then use Protomatrix as a communication tool. I emphasize that again and again, communication tool, because it helps everyone be on the same page. And then use your Protomatrix to manage your individual goals. You, at the end of the day, are the most important person within this entire picture. If you don't get value out of Protomatrix, it doesn't matter what your organization does with it, right? So if you can make your use yourself succeed, then I think everything else should just fall in place. So what success with Protomatrix should look like? You have one central place to track priorities. If you open up Protomatrix, you know exactly within the context of every project what it is you need to work on, or what are the things you need to work on today, what are the things you need to work on this week. Everyone on the team should understand and are aligned on key tasks because they're on the same page in the same project as you. Repetitive procedures are templatized. As I mentioned earlier, you can save templates as you create them. And then if you have important email, prioritize them. Again, I have so many important emails. I prioritize all of them. I triage them to the proper team members, and then I ensure that they're not forgotten because I'm setting due dates and I'm setting reminders. So at the very least, it'll come back up and I actually know that I have to go and actually answer that email. That's it. With that, I'm going to go and look at the chat section to see if there are questions, and then I'll try my best to answer them. So if you have any other questions, make sure you send in the chat right now. This is a perfect time for us to discuss them. All right, so let's see here. Does PM work with planner and tasks? So yes, let me show you how that works. So the way Protomatrix works is, give me 1 second here. I'm going to open back up. So everything I showed you here is integration with Teams and Outlook, but Protomatrix also has other integrations that's much more beyond Teams and Outlook. So for example, if you go to the connectors page, so if you go to your account in Protomatrix, click on task connectors, you'll see these options here. We have integration with Jira, Outlook, To-Do, Planner, Azure DevOps, Zoom, and Zendesk. So what it's going to do is that actually each of these will pull in a project into Protomatrix. So it's intended to be a one-way sync. So what that means is if you have planner tasks, it'll pull all your planner tasks into Protomatrix, and then you can see that in a project. Then hopefully over time, what you're going to do is you take these planner tasks and then convert them into Protomatrix tasks. And then from there, you can actually prioritize it. We don't do two-way sync for a couple of reasons. A lot of these other applications lack the metadata and the context that Protomatrix has, because Protomatrix, again, is all about priorities and ensuring things go in the appropriate quadrant and so forth. And a lot of these other applications don't have that context. So then, when we actually do two-way sync, a lot of things can start breaking and so forth. So these are the ways that you can pull in other tasks into Protomatrix. We also have other integrations as well. So for example, you can see that you can actually see in my Microsoft Edge here, I have the Protomatrix Edge extension. There's also the Protomatrix Chrome extension. And the way the extension works is actually really neat. It will take any web page that you're viewing and you can convert it into a task in Protomatrix, or you can attach any web page into an existing task. So what that means is if you use any software that's a web app at like SharePoint or Salesforce or whatever, and you're browsing a certain page, you can use our Chrome extension and Edge extension to convert them into tasks. So that's how you do the integrations with tasks and planners and so forth, to-dos. So the next question is, if you install the app in Teams, does it install for everyone in the team or just for you? So if you're an IT admin, you're able to install Protomatrix for the entire organization. We actually have instructions for that. If you have questions there, just reach out to us and we'll show you how to do that. It's very easy. But if you're not an IT admin, you can go to Teams and Outlook and install for yourself. When you sign in, we generally recommend that you use Azure Active Directory if you use Teams and Outlook. So then Protomatrix will actually integrate with all that. And then everything is just seamless, automatically bring together into one central place. Sometimes you might need IT to approve it. But as I mentioned, Protomatrix is a Microsoft 365 security certified solution. So when you look inside Teams, for example, I'll show you here. If I go to Teams here and I go and I search for Protomatrix, actually, you see how Protomatrix has this little it's M365 certified box here. So that means it makes it pretty easy for IT organizations to approve that as well. Can I link emails with Protomatrix from Gmail? We do have integrations with Gmail as well. So if you go to the Gmail App Store, you can actually install Protomatrix there. Now, our integrations with Gmail isn't as robust as Outlook due to limitation in Gmail. But as I mentioned earlier, every single one of your projects inside Protomatrix has an email address. So what I've done, let me show you how I actually do it. Again, when I go to my inbox here inside Protomatrix, I get my secret inbox address. I save that as a contact in Gmail. And then when I have a task that I need to prioritize, I would forward it into my inbox address. And then the way Protomatrix works is if you have that email that you forward, then in the subject, you just say due tomorrow, or you can say, due tomorrow, and then new line, remind me weekly, something like that. Protomatrix will actually create the task, set the due date, set reminders for you directly from any forwarded email. So I actually have that set up as well on my phone, because that's usually when I need to prioritize a task, because I'm looking at it and then so it's forwarded in my inbox as needed. So the next question is this accessible to someone who uses screen reading software? I actually don't know the answer to that. So if you want to reach out to our support at affluence.com and give us a little bit more description on the limitations that you have with the screen reading software, then we can take a look. But there are a lot of capabilities inside Protomatrix that probably required being able to visually see the task that that you have. So we're not, personally, I'm not as familiar on how we do, how we work with in terms of accessibility. But if you reach out to us with more details, we can actually try to see if there's a better answer there. Thank you for these questions. Are there any other questions? As I mentioned, my email is hi@affluence.com. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. At the same time, also, reach out to our support at affluence.com if you have other questions around licensing or capabilities and so forth. Protomatrix is a communication software, right? And so hopefully, when you walk away from this webinar, you look at it as a way to just jot down all these things that's in your brain, so then, you can take that and easily share it and visualize it and tell others about it, what it is that you think is important. And then if everyone else, just imagine for a second, if everyone within your organization shared their priority matrix with you, how easy it is that you understand what it is that you need to work on. So that's the end goal there. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate all the comments.